Thanks for checking out this video. So I finally made it through the Vinegar Syndrome Lost Picture Show box set of 10 films. Well, technically 11 if you count the documentary that they put on here, but I wanted to go ahead and go over all of the films briefly for each one, but I wanted to do a ranked list of my enjoyment of the films from least enjoyed to most enjoyed. And yeah, just kind of talk about this in general. I'm not really going to show the packaging off much in this. If you watch my haul video of when I originally got it, you'll see I kind of like opened things up and really showed it to you. So you can see that there. But this is massive. It's very big. There's 10 films in here, a lot booklets in there as well. A lot of cool artwork to it. So they did a bang up job with the actual presentation of this. And I'm a really big fan of that. Also, it's a very ambitious project to do 10 of these kind of previously lost films. And a lot of them, just so you know, the majority of them are like sexploitation type. So for me, this wasn't like something that I love, although there are some things in there I really did enjoy. Overall, it's not really my type of thing because I'm into like some of the sexploitation movies, but an overwhelming majority, they don't really hit for me, to be honest. But I'll kind of talk a little bit more about that as I'm going over the certain films. So the first one I'm going to talk about is actually the one that I think was the best, which is the documentary. Then I'll do the actual ranking of the films that were lost films. Now, the documentary is called Against the Grain, and it's Vinegar Syndrome putting together this documentary about film preservation and how they do things, but also interviewing other people who did that type of stuff within the industry. So it's about obtaining films and how they preserve films and the importance of it and everything. And it's a really cool documentary. That's the film I like the most off the box set. But it's not fair to put that in the ranking just because it's a brand new film that has nothing to do with like being much older and being a lost film for a while. So that is my favorite on there, but it's not part of the ranking. Another thing I want to point out is one of the other special features on it is it's like 7 minutes or so. There is a walk around of the Vinegar Syndrome headquarters. So they have the store in the front and then they have their offices and where they do everything. And it's just really cool to see where things are done. And, you know, when you're buying these films, you're just like, oh, that's where they, you know, go through the film and they clean it up and they look at what's usable, what's not usable. Oh, that's where they edit things. Oh, that's where they clean things up. Oh, that's where they make their t-shirts. That's where they make the photos of the films to put on the website. And also, there's the person who ends up doing customer service when I email. Just really interesting, cool stuff like that. So I love the fact that they put that on there because someone like me, like I always like wonder, what is it like there? And now I know exactly what it's like there. So anyway, let's get into the actual film. So my least favorite of all these films is What's Love, from 1987. Now this one is totally inept. Like filmmaking is totally inept in my opinion. It's made by a guy who was who mainly did porn, but then decided that he wanted to do a film that's not porn, but he put porn actors in it. So it plays like a porn that's missing the porn. So it's really weird. Like there's not a whole lot of story. It's just kind of about like love triangles. It is very focused on the sexploitation. So it's like he was doing hardcore porn stuff and then he's just kind of like, well, let's do like less than softcore porn. Let's do that. So it's really ineptly made. The dialogue is terrible. It was very boring for me. Although I will say there were a few cool shots in the film. So I would overall, out of 5 stars, I would give it 1.5 stars. I'm not a fan of that one. The second to last, so number 9, I guess, was Barbara from 1970 for me. Now, I didn't really like this film a lot. It was very boring for me, but I also see the importance of it. It's basically a film that's just about a bunch of kind of like hippie individuals who are in like this, I don't want to say commune. It's not like a commune. They're in this relationship, the whole group of them, where they're kind of pushing their sexual limits and exploring themselves very openly and like actively going out and doing different sexual things. The film is meant to be extremely subversive for the time, and especially in the beginning, it has this kind of voicing over that's kind of has all this political stuff that's kind of talking about like censorship and like pushing boundaries and stuff like that. So I know that's the purpose of it, and for that reason, that's interesting to me. So I like respect this film. But at the same time, when I watch it, it's not very interesting to me personally because it's very focused on the sex. And it's just like sex scene after sex scene after sex scene with not a whole lot of actual story, but there are some interjections of people kind of talking in a philosophical way about sexual relationships and stuff like that. So interesting, but not my thing. So that's why I put Barbara as number 9. So number 8 for me was Voodoo Heartbeat, also known as The Sex Serum of Dr. Blake. Oh, I gave Barbara 2 out of 5 stars. Yeah, Voodoo Heartbeat, The Sex Serum of Dr. Blake is my number 8. And that's from 1970. This one, a little more interesting than Barbara for me. It did have more of a story to it. It is still very focused on the sexploitation aspect and has a lot of those sex scenes that, for me, kind of like break up the the potentially good pacing of a film. But it's basically about this serum that someone can get, that this guy gets a hold of, and it kind of makes him like a crazed maniac who goes around killing people. Sounds interesting. I don't really think the way it's executed is all that interesting, but an interesting concept nonetheless. I enjoyed enough of it to sit through it once, but that's why Voodoo Heartbeat is my number 8. So number 7 for me was The Last of the American Hobos. Oh, sorry. I gave 2.5 stars to Voodoo Heartbeat. Last of the American Hobos from 1970 is my number 7. That one is quasi-documentary. It is about it's about kind of the hobo culture from the I said 1970. Yeah. So it's about the hobo culture from like the 60s and into 1970 that's about celebrating it to a degree and just kind of giving people a glimpse into what it's like. So some of the stuff is actually staged and is kind of more like story-like, and some of it looks like it actually is kind of like documentary-ish. They actually say in the material in here that it is like a quasi-documentary. It's not full-on documentary. But it's very interesting to see like what hobo culture was, like the intent of hobo culture versus what like homelessness has turned into now. It seemed like back then it was more of like a choice for a lot of these people that they were interviewing and talking to and having in the film, and that was quite interesting to me. So I did enjoy that one. I gave that a solid enough 3 stars, and that's why it's my pick for number 7. Now coming in at number 6, I have Red Midnight from 1966. This one was interesting because it was done by, I believe it was like an optometrist who did this, who happened to have enough money and wanted to make a film. But it's this interesting mix of like a Red Scare type film where people are kind of like afraid of domestic terrorism, and there's like this plot that plays out throughout the film. But it's also about like the fears of the filmmaker and how populous cities have become and how that can lead to like larger disasters. And there's this big like nuclear bomb fear at play in it, which how those things all come together is kind of interesting. So I did enjoy watching it. It's very odd. Also has a lot of a sexploitation element to it, just so you know. So Red Midnight is my number 6. I gave that 3 stars as well. At number 5, I'm going with Deep Inside from 1968. This one, not a whole lot happens in it. It's mainly about a woman who's trying to kind of mess with her friends and set them up in like different relationships. And she's very manipulative, and it's kind of how everyone else kind of goes along with it and then finds out that, you know, she's this kind of two-faced individual. This one also is very much focused on the sexploitation aspect, but there is more of like a story to it than a lot of the other movies. And I actually found myself kind of getting sucked into the story, and I was very much engaged throughout. I think the acting is fun and interesting in it. And yeah, I mean, it's in black and white. And if you're into sexploitation, I think this is definitely one of the more interesting sexploitation films on this one. But yeah, that's why I put Deep Inside at number 5 with an overall 3-star rating. So then going to my number 4, I put Beware the Black Widow from 1968 as well. This one, also in black and white, is basically about working girls who end up being in situations where Johns are getting like picked off by the Black Widow, and it's like a woman who's like all dressed in black and has like a big hat with a black veil. So it does have this interesting kind of who's the killer aspect to it. So the story is pretty engaging. The acting is pretty fun. There is a sexploitation element to it, as you would probably assume from a film like that. And yeah, it was pretty interesting. It was pretty engaging to me. So that's why I put it at my number 4, and I gave it an overall rating of 3 as well. Then at number 3, I went with The Las Vegas Strangler, also known as No Tears for the Damned, and that one is also from 1968. This one, another black and white film. I really liked the acting in this one, and there were some really interesting characters, and there was a really interesting aspect of the backstory to the main character, who is this Las Vegas Strangler. You got to think this is much older, so we weren't in the time period of people being like, we want to hide the identity of the killer necessarily. So you know from the get-go pretty much who the killer is, and you're just kind of seeing what situations he ends up in, and you end up learning kind of like why he's doing what he's doing. The acting isn't the best, but it is fun and interesting to me. Same with the dialogue writing, and the story is more interesting to me than a lot of the other stories in this set. So I actually did enjoy this one and may watch that one again. I've thought about it from time to time here. So that's why my number 3 is The Las Vegas Strangler, also with a 3-star rating. Then coming in at number 2 for me is Violated from 1973. And I'll just tell you right now, I also gave this a 3-star rating. So all of these are kind of like different levels of 3 stars for the most part. But Violated is in color. This is one that's more focused on the assault of women that this, killer is doing. So some people do survive, but it's also about the actual assaults themselves, and then it's about kind of afterwards what the survivors decide to do. Like they actually rise up and try and take things into their own hands. So it was very interesting to see kind of a twist on the revenge type film, you know what I'm trying to say there, where the women kind of become even more empowered from what happened and try and turn things around and get revenge. Very interesting. And then one of the other cool things is the killer slash assaulter wears different like Halloween masks throughout the film, so it's kind of fun to see like the change in that. This is one of the more interesting and riveting stories in the box set, basically, and I like the way it played out, so that's why I put number 2 as Violated at 3-star rating. So my number 1, people now know by process of elimination, is The Rare Blue Apes of Cannibal Isle, also known as Pirates of Cannibal Isle, or Mr. Quack Quack and Captain Croc. I gave this one 3.5 stars. It's from 1974. I think I already said that. But anyway, this is the one that's a kid's film. And it's very weird. But I was mesmerized by this film. It's obviously a kid's film. It has some catchy music to it because there are these kind of musical numbers that the characters end up doing. And it's also creepy and weird. So it walks this really weird line of being like, yes, this is clearly for children, and I see why this is for children, and it's light and it's fun. But then there's all these other things. You're just like, this dialogue is really weird. And the costuming, these creatures in it look so creepy and weird. And I was watching it, and my wife came into the room, and she's like, what is this? So I explained it to her, and she's just like, it's weird. And I'm like, yes, it's very weird, but I can't stop watching it, and I'm so mesmerized, and I just want to keep seeing where this goes. This is one I'm definitely going to watch again. This is one I'm going to introduce to other people because I think this really needs to be seen to be believed. It's just this weird thing of like, it's kind of a terrible movie, but it's also kind of a good movie. It kind of walks that line in a really weird way, and I'm super glad that this film made it on here because it doesn't fit the theme of everything else for the most part. Last of the American Hobos is definitely one of the outliers, as is The Rare Blue Apes of Cannibal Isle. Those two don't really fit with everything else. Everything else is like sexploitation. But so glad that Rare Blue Apes is on here because, man, that is a wild ride, and it's definitely worth it. So anyway, those are my thoughts on the Lost Picture Show by Vinegar Syndrome. Who knows if they'll do another thing like this in the future, but I'd be really interested to check that out. This is where I'd like to hear what other people thought about this, so you can go ahead and put it in the comments. And let me know, I don't know, maybe you want to let me know your ranking for it, or if you just want to tell me a few of your favorites or your least favorites, we can talk about that too. But go ahead and put the comments down there. Do me a quick favor, if you did like this video at all, please put the thumbs up on it, because that helps me with the YouTube algorithm, find some other people who might be interested in this content. And do me a favor, subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, because that is the best way to repay me for all these free videos that I end up putting out there. And it's quick, it's painless, it costs you nothing. It's just a very small, quick thing you can do for me. And if you want to know when I'm putting up new videos, you can just hit the notification bell button, and then you will know. But anyway, thanks so much for taking your time to watch this video. Oh, by the way, I did wear my Vinegar Syndrome shirt for this. I wasn't planning that, but it just happened. So, but anyway, thanks for checking this out. And until next time, keep it brutal.